right-wing commentator Candace Owens was in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, and she was testifying at a hearing before the House Judiciary Committee. The hearing was scheduled to, quote, examine hate crimes, the impact white nationalist groups have on American communities, and the spread of white identity ideology, end quote. And that was according to a description of the event. So, of course, Owens was there to push back on the narrative that white nationalism exists, and it is actual threat to not just American society, but global societies. And that's exactly what she did. She stated that it's only a discussion every 4 years or so during presidential elections, and that's because Democrats want people to live in fear. They want specifically black people to live in fear. Black people, Latinx people. They want to fearmonger these people of color, to live in fear, and how the big bad white man is coming for you, and this ideology, this hateful ideology, is actually a threat. She pushed back on that, even though there is data, there's actual data that says that hate crimes are up, and that includes hate crimes by white supremacists. But those are just pesky details that she has no concern for. So anyway, during this hearing, Representative Ted Lieu, who is a Democratic Congress member on this committee, and he is from California, he chose to play audio of Owens' own words about Adolf Hitler.
In congressional hearings, the minority party gets to select its own witnesses. And of all the people that Republicans could have selected, they picked Candace Owens. I don't know Miss Owens. I'm not going to characterize her. I'm going to let her own words do the talking. So I'm going to play for you the first 30 seconds of a statement she made about Adolf Hitler.
I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. Problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German.
All right, so my first question is to Ms. Hirschenoff. Ms. Owens said, quote, if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. So when people try to legitimize Adolf Hitler, does that feed into white nationalist ideology?
It does, Mr. Lieu. I know that Ms. Owens distanced herself from those comments later, but we expressed great concern over the original comments.
He is assuming that black people will not go pursue the full 2-hour clip. And he purposefully he cut off, and you didn't hear the question that was asked of me. He's trying to present as if I was launching a defense of Hitler in Germany, when in fact, the question that was asked of me was pertaining to whether or not I believed that whether or not I believed in nationalism, and that nationalism was bad. And what I responded to was that I do not believe that we should be characterizing Hitler as a nationalist. He was a homicidal, psychopathic maniac that killed his own people. A nationalist would not kill their own people.
I like how she offered as a defense. The whole clip wasn't played.
Yeah.
I wasn't defending Hitler. Actually, it doesn't matter whether you're defending Hitler. You're just being historically ignorant and historically stupid. Mm-hmm. Because Hitler wasn't just a nationalist. He was an ethno-nationalist. And Hitler didn't just, want everyone to be German. Hitler wanted to kill everyone that wasn't German. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference. But again, unlike Diamond and Silk, I think she has malicious intent. She knows exactly what she was doing. And that's just based on her history too, because her family filed a discrimination lawsuit when she was before, I can't remember before she went to college or not. But yeah, her family filed a discrimination lawsuit on account of some racism. So for her to get up here and act as if there's this fear-mongering or this identity politics that's taken too far, when she was in a completely different place and she benefited from a discrimination lawsuit years ago, is just outright disingenuous and hacky.
But see, her narrative is that times have changed. See, her narrative is that the discrimination and the racism that her parents, I guess, they experienced back in the time when she was a child, that was far more, that was far more fierce than what's going on right now. Right now, white nationalism, white supremacy, it's not something that actually is a problem, I guess, for people of color in the United States.
United States, I think that's, I guess that's limiting if you just want to talk about the United States, but we can do that.
It is.
Because since she was talking about Hitler, she's not talking about the United States.
she's
She brought up Hitler.
Yeah.
So she brought up Hitler. So, I mean, if she's going to make that point about white nationalism being overblown, I wonder if she can go to Christ Church right now and make that point. Or I wonder if she can go to the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston and make that argument. I wonder if she could kind of challenge the federal government's own numbers in regard to the deaths caused by white supremacist extremists in the United States alone. I wonder if she can go to them, the individuals who have the data, and then make that same argument.
See, data, I told you, those are pesky details. So she doesn't care about actual details.
And nobody's presenting this case that every person, every black person, or every gay person, or every Jew is walking around who is just in danger. There's, you know what I'm saying? So she's presenting this case that Democrats specifically are fear-mongering every 4 years specifically, when that's really not something that I see Democrats doing specifically every 4 years. She doesn't want to be involved in the conversation, number one. And this is a conversation that happens throughout the year, every year, and not just during election. True. And even that's false, because that did not come up when Bush ran for president. Him or his father, HW or GW. Is GW? Herbert Walker.
HW.
It didn't come up then. It didn't really come up that much when Mitt Romney was running for president. I don't think it was an issue then. Did it? I don't recall it coming up. Not when Reagan became president. Now, there was some kind of, I would say, racially tinged, just to be politically correct for right-wingers. Yep. There was some racially tinged or some racial elements to Ronald Reagan's policy positions that were brought up, but not a lot of talk about white nationalism. So to say that it gets brought up every 4 years is a false narrative. It gets brought up with Trump's cases because he fuels it.
Her defense of her own comments make no sense. She said Hitler was a homicidal, psychopathic maniac that killed his own people. A nationalist would not kill their own people. Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would, because Hitler actually did. There were people in Germany that were Jewish. There were people in Germany that were Jewish. There were thousands of Jews. There were thousands of German Jews that were killed by the Nazis. A white nationalist wants people that are unlike them, that are not white. They want them gone. Okay? So you might have somebody like Richard Spencer, who, famously part of the alt-right, that I coined the phrase. He's credited with that. But he says that, he wants a peaceful exodus for people of color to get out of the country. He doesn't want any violence or anything like that. But he does want a country that is just purely white. Is his position the only position? Or are there many people that ascribe themselves to be alt-right or white nationalists, white supremacists, anybody that has that, I guess, that similar type of vantage point, that similar type of ideology? Do people exist that want to kill other people that are not like them, that are not white, to get rid of them, to get out of this white society as they claim it to be so? Yes. The whole reason why German Jews were killed was because the Nazis didn't consider them to be as of one of them. That's the whole reason why they were killed. And the same thing goes here and everywhere else in the globe too. If a white nationalist doesn't consider you of color, you person of color, to be of this nation, you shouldn't be here, then you're not part of this nation. They don't care about killing you because you're not supposed to be here anyway. A nationalist would not kill their own people? That's ridiculous. So there's another clip that we wanted to show you with Candace Owens.
Over and over again about black conservatives when they have the audacity to think for themselves and become educated about our history and the myth of things like the Southern switch and the Southern strategy, which never happened.
So here we go. The Southern strategy and the Southern switch was not real at all. It was invented. It was a myth. Now, I don't consider Candace Owens to be a stupid woman. I don't consider her to be unintelligent. Mm-hmm. So she's engaging in revisionist history here. So,
no, she's thinking for herself.
She's
thinking for herself.
Back in the day, if you're talking about the mid-1900s, 1940s, 50s, 60s, Southerners, the Southern states, of course, they had come out of the Civil War, right? They lost the war, but they were still here. Now, those were the conservatives of that day and time. The Southern states, they were the conservatives. And man, I can't believe it's still true, but in 2019, they're still the conservatives. The Southern states, historically conservative. To say that there was no Southern strategy, no Southern strategy, that would be like saying that Republican candidates, didn't actually run their campaigns to appeal to white people in the format of racism, to interject racism into their candidacy. That actually happened with a multitude of candidates. Happened.
It's recorded on video and audio. You can go look this up.
Exactly. So you're denying history here. You're engaging in revisionist history. Now, the other thing is the whole Southern switch. Now, we talked about that on an earlier segment with Diamond and Silk. There, of course, was a Southern switch because of the Southern strategy, these candidates that were making their appeal on the grounds of racism to white voters, Southern white voters, these Southerners started to run from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Now, again, conservatives, white conservatives, Southern conservatives, they were in the Democratic Party at the time. Now, we know that the people that were for abolishing slavery, that was the party of the Republicans. So, I mean, like, they always run to this. Hey, the Republicans were the ones that, got rid of slavery. They were the ones that supported the civil rights movement and all this, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Were they conservatives, though? They weren't conservatives. So you would be saying that the same people that were protesting against slavery, they came up through the years, and then in the 1950s, they started to discriminate against black people. They started to fly the Confederate flag. In 2019, these same conservatives, when you're talking about criminal justice reform, they don't want to hear anything about it. When you're talking about, in cases of proportionality, when you're talking about black people and Latinx people being targeted by law enforcement, they don't want to hear anything about it whatsoever. They still protect these Confederate monuments, these Confederate flags. These are the conservatives of our generation and in the mid-1900s.
I'm glad you did not skip over that. I thought you were about to skip over that because you did mention the Confederate flag. Yeah. And I do think that's important because if we're talking about the South and the Civil War and the upholding of slavery, and after that, the Voting Rights, Civil Rights Act being enacted, we can't talk about that without talking about Confederate heritage and Southern heritage. So what they're saying now is they are the people that are, Candace Owens, conservatives, the same people that are fighting tooth and nail to keep these Confederate monuments up that represent slavery and represent oppression. She's trying to tell us that those are the people that fought against it.
Well, how would that even make any sense? Do you see that?
But see, again, you mentioned all that stuff when it comes to like criminal justice reform and things like that. The reason why they have to deny that is because they have to create this fantasy that it doesn't exist because they don't care about that stuff. That's the only way they can present themselves as the party for the blacks, the party for black people, because if they present themselves as a party for black people, then they would have to address that stuff.
You would have to.
You would have to address that stuff.
Because that's the only way they can go. That's the only place they can go, but they're being completely disingenuous by going there.
Like, again, and how indignant do you have to be, right? Again, like when we're talking about black people in general and talking about why they vote the way they do and then being a particular voting bloc, I mean, we already know why black people vote the way they do. Like even if we're just talking about, like we're having a conversation within a compartment of kind of this duopoly, like this two-party system. Like within this two-party system, black people in general are going to do the same thing that everybody else does and go for the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Mm-hmm. So that's not saying that the Democratic Party is perfect. Like we obviously had talked about the Democratic Party more so than the Republican Party, but it's talked about in a different context. But to me, it's like for conservatives, especially white conservatives, but there's a contingent of black conservatives that like they have like this indignant mindset that they can't fathom as to just these black people must be brainwashed. There's nothing wrong with us. They were just brainwashed into voting the Democrats. The Democrats have fooled them, which is interesting because what do they always mention when it comes to the Democrats being fooled? What did the Democrats fool black people with? As if black people are the only people that take advantage of certain programs. What do they say? What do conservatives like Cactus Ostrich say? And Tatum and what do they say that black people were enticed by? What do they say?
Welfare programs?
Welfare programs.
Yeah, entitlement programs.
Think about what that means. Mm-hmm. Again, like they don't even understand how racist that sounds and how racist that is. Yep. They are suggesting that like black people are lazy and they were coaxed and enticed by free things. And they just wonder why black people don't want to be a part of their political movement, their party, their ideology. It's pretty simple. And they're just indignant and they don't look at themselves to figure out, hey, why aren't black people voting for us?
We know conservatives of today are the same ones that they minimize what truly caused the Civil War. Because we know that there was an effort, and it wasn't just an effort, it was a successful effort to change the textbooks that are in our public schools. And what it does is it minimizes the aspect of slavery as it relates to the Civil War. So the slavery aspect was the main factor of the Civil War. But conservatives want to minimize that because it does, it's an ugly history. It puts conservatism in a very bad light. So they wanted to minimize that. So it's just a contributing factor. Was that an effort that Democrats wanted to see happen? Did Democrats fight for that? No, they tried to fight against that. Conservatives fought for that. Why would conservatives that are a part of the Republican Party, why would they feel some type of way about slavery, rightfully so, being characterized as the main concern of the Civil War, the main contributing factor of the Civil War, the thing that started the Civil War, because the slave states, the southern states, wanted to protect the institution of slavery. Why would they want to change that? Why would these conservatives
want to whitewash history? Why would they want to do that?
The same conservatives, mind you, the same conservatives that fought against slavery.
That were champions. These are the same ones that were champions.
Like, this is nonsense. Like they keep doing this. We keep hearing this commentary from people like Candace Owens that are saying that the Democratic Party is the party of discrimination and they're the racist party. They're the one that fought for slavery and blah blah blah. Yeah, okay. If you're just looking at parties, yeah, the party that was repping slavery back in the day in the 1800s was the Democratic Party. But we always say, what does a party name mean? It doesn't mean anything. You have to look at the ideology of people. And the ideology of those slave owners and the people that supported the institution of slavery was conservative. They weren't fighting against it.
Let me see. Who consistently trots out rhetoric like we should go back to the good old days? Who consistently does that, Will? Who trots out that rhetoric? Make America...
The South will rise again?
The South will rise again. Don't tread on me. The South will rise again. Mm-hmm. And let's go. We need to go back to the good old days. Who consistently trots out that rhetoric? America was better off in the 1940s, 1950s. Who consistently trots out that rhetoric, Will?
I won't say the Republican Party. I'm not going to say the Republican Party. I would say conservatives.
Correct.
I would say conservatives.
They feel some kind of way about how they're perceived, but instead of kind of looking at themselves, they want to create some fantasy. You know what I'm saying? Instead of looking at themselves. And again, that by no means, that doesn't mean that any party, including the Democratic Party, is perfect. But you don't need to like revise history to make yourself feel better about being paid to be disingenuous.